like I've said, you will find people talking about different project management life cycles. Now, those ones arise because for some projects, this you elaborate more on initiation than on planning and design. And for some projects, you elaborate more on execution and controlling as opposed to planning and design. And because of that, we have diverse, and those tools are dependent on the type of projects that you are dealing with. So this is what happens in the project life cycle, and this is why we say it follows a logical sequence. You must initiate or start the project, then you must plan for the project, then you must execute the project or do the project, and then you must close and exit the project. But remember, when you are planning for the project, you are planning for the future. Like you decide to plan today, you decide to put down a plan for a project today. When you are planning, you are saying this project is going to take 6 months. Now, this project is going to start on the 1st of April and it's going to take 6 months. So you see, you are planning for the future, but you don't know the future. Now, because you don't know the future, in a project, we must have monitoring and controlling of the project. So when you plan, you have planned for the future. But when you execute, the situations are not ideal. So there are things which will keep changing. So what will happen is that as you are executing, you will keep monitoring and controlling, meaning you do a task and you check the plan, because in the plan you are pouring into the future, but now you are doing it actually. Say you plan something for 1 week, then you realize that it has taken 1.5 weeks. But in your plan, you had planned it for 1 week. So what you will do, you will monitor. So you'll ask yourself, okay, I said that I'm going to do this task for 1 week, but it has taken 1.5 weeks. So what am I going to do? So there's that monitoring where you check a task against the plan. Then controlling is you take remedial action. And that is why you notice that this arrow is double edged, because you, as you are executing, you are monitoring and you are feeding back into the execution. But you notice that this arrow is one directional. So it's one directional because when you are planning, you are not monitoring and controlling. When you are planning, you are just planning for the future. You are assuming ideal conditions. But we know that realistically, most of the time, you will not, things will not go according to your plan. So this you can only feed back into the plan after you have executed a certain task, but you cannot uh, get information from the plan and you use it for monitoring. So monitoring and controlling only occurs during execution, and after monitoring and controlling, then you can feed back into the plan. So for the phases, initiating and starting, the outputs and the critical success factors are defined. You define what you want, what you will get, and how you will measure the success of the project. In planning, you break down the project into smaller parts or tasks. Now, let's say your client wants a stock management system for his supermarket. The final product is a stock management system. But for you to get that stock management system, there are certain things you'll have to do. You will have to gather requirements from the customer. You will have to specify. You'll have to do specification. You will have to design. You will have to code or implement. You will have to test, and so on. So those are all phases. So this is what we refer to by planning. So you break the project into smaller tasks, and then you'll go into another level of elaboration, where you'll start first of all use what is called a work breakdown structure, where you will break that project into tasks. Then later on, from the work breakdown structure, you are going to end up with a Gantt chart, where you are going to attach time to a task. Now we shall be looking at that. That all comes under the planning phase. So you'll end up work breakdown structure, project schedule, Gantt chart, and then you'll start doing the costing. Then you go to the execution, where you execute the plan. So the plan is just documentation, a piece of paper or papers, where you have said what you are going to do and when you are going to do it. But now the execution is you are actually doing it. You go out to see the customer to collect requirements. You come back and do a system specification. Then you sit down and do the design. Then you start coding. So you are doing the actual work. Then monitoring and controlling is an ongoing, is a continuous activity, where project activities are measured. Now, what we mean by project activities are measured, in your plan you said, I will use 1 week to gather requirements. But then you go and you find that your client is not there. Or you go and you find your client has had to make an abrupt trip. So whereas you planned to gather requirement, you planned to use 1 week to gather requirements, you are using 2 weeks to gather requirements. So what you'll need to do is that you need to measure. You say, I planned for 1 week. I have used 2 weeks. It means I'm not following the plan. So what do I do to recover that 1 week? Because I planned for 1 week, I've used 2 weeks, meaning it's going to impact on the other parts of the project. So in monitoring and controlling, project activities are measured, and then necessary adjustments are made on the plan. So you'll have to go and make adjustments on the plan. Then finally, you'll have to close or exit. Any project has to be closed, because we said a project has a start and an end. In closing the project, you will deliver the product to the customer. You will make payments to the suppliers. The customer will make payments to you, and you say the project is now over. And you remember that at the planning stage, you will have signed a contract with the client. So once the project is closed, the client cannot come and start telling you to do certain things, other things. For example, if you say delivering the product, if maintenance of the product was not in the contract, then you will not do anything else after delivering. And that's why that contract, and we shall be looking at it, is very important. You must say, when does the project close? And what do I mean by the project closing? For example, for a house, once it's complete, you close the project when you hand the keys to the customer. That's when you say, I've closed this project. So these are the 4 phases. The only thing, for different projects, the elaboration is different in these phases. So let's look at them in deeply. So in the initiation phase, the project sponsor is identified. Who is producing the finance? Who is this project for? Who does it belong to? The scope and deliverables are defined, where you say, your client tells you, I want a stock management system. So what is the scope? I want, for me to say the project is complete, I want you to install this stock management system in my supermarket and leave it working. You stop, then you stop there. Now, if it, and you see, he'll have told you the amount of money that he has. So if he starts telling you, and what of maintenance, then you tell him, for that money, for maintenance, you'll have to give me an additional fee, or I'll be charging you annually. Then if you have any problems, I will be coming. So you must define the boundaries very clearly, or you'll end up in court. The budget is approved. I have 10 million shillings for this stock management system, and this is what it's going to do. Then you must make broad statements about risks, approach, timelines. Why do we say broad statements? It's because there are some things which are unforeseen. Somebody falling sick is unforeseen. So you must try to, as much as possible, to be explicit and say, in case this happens, this is what we shall do. In case this happens, and in case there's this delay, this is how we shall approach it. So and these are broad statements because you are trying to think of unforeseen things which you are not sure of. So you just make broad statements, but at least make a statement such that you don't start disagreeing. As stakeholders are identified, identify anybody who is going to be involved in the project. Who is the system administrator? Who are the customers? And so on. Who are the users? And then the project manager is assigned and the project team is assembled. Now, at the end of this phase, we have an approved project charter. So out there in the industry, we call it a project charter. Now, in second year, you did a project. Now, in that project, most of the time we tell you to write a project proposal. So this, what I'm calling a project charter, is the legal document that serves as a contract between the product development team and the client. So this is a legal document, and if you are suing somebody or you are being sued, that is the document that will be presented in court, because you are going to say, this is our project charter, and the project charter is signed by both parties. So when you sign the project charter, you are saying you are agreeing to the terms in that charter. And to change the project charter, you must follow a formal procedure. You just the customer cannot just change things in the charter. Neither can you change things in the charter, because the moment it's written, it becomes a legally binding document, and both of you sign it. And when you sign it, you are agreeing to the terms in the charter. Now we shall be looking at that later on. So, like when we tell you write a proposal for your project, that is an agreement between you and the university. Now, most of the time, it is done at our department. We do it at the departmental level. But that contract is between you and the university. Lecturers in the department are simply representatives of the university. So, areas to be considered under the initiation phase. The initiation phase should include a plan that encompasses the following areas: analyzing the business needs or requirements in measurable goals. you must say what is going to be done. Uh, at the end of this period, a stock management system will be delivered. Now, when you say a stock management system will be delivered, that delivery is a measurable term. Now, under that stock management system, there are certain sub-objectives that will come in. Requirements will be gathered. Now, that gathering requirements is deliverable. The system analysis will be done. Analysis is measurable, the word analysis, because there will be a document on the system's analysis. The system will be designed. Designing is measurable. There will be design diagrams. The system will be coded. Coding is measurable. You can see the code and so on. So that is the first thing, is that you must analyze the business needs and requirements in measurable goals. Then you must review the current operations. I don't have a stock management system. That is the current situation. So, because I don't have or I'm using a manual stock management system, that is the current situation. So you start by saying that, because after stating that, then you can know what the project is all about. Am I coming up with a new system? Or you say the existing system is outdated. It needs to be upgraded. So it becomes clear that you are upgrading an existing system. So it's either you are coming up with a new system or you are upgrading an existing system. So that is under the initiation. The conceptual design of operation of the final product should be declared. You must say, what is this final product going to do? The equipment and contracting requirements, including an assessment of the long lead time items. Now, I will skip this because this comes under scheduling. In projects, we'll have to schedule, where we'll talk about lead and lag. So, but at this point, at the initiation phase, you can only do it at a very high level. You can only say that if this happens, this project will delay, or this phase should not be delayed, but we shall be looking at this. Then financial analysis of the costs and benefits, including a budget, should be done at the initiation phase. Now we shall be doing financial analysis later on. Then stakeholder analysis, including the users and support personnel for the project, must be defined. Then the project charter is drawn, which includes costs, tasks, deliverables, and schedule. So at the initiation phase, the product that comes out of it is what I'm calling the project charter. And like in the university, is what we call your project proposal. So that is the legal document that forms the basis on how you are going to do the project. Then in the planning phase, deliverables are clearly defined. These deliverables, based on the deliverables, a work breakdown structure which defines the work packages is going to be drawn. Is usually a diagram that shows the tasks that are going to be done. Now, from the work breakdowns work breakdown structure, we develop a schedule. From the schedule, we develop a Gantt chart. So then at the planning phase, plans are made for the management of stakeholders? How do you manage stakeholders? You must make plans for how to communicate. In project management, communication is very important. You must make plans to how to ensure that you are building quality into a product. Now, this is very important. Important in the sense that quality can never be a face in a project. You cannot put it somewhere and say that now I want to build quality. Quality is built into a project. Quality starts from the time you gather requirements up to the time you test. So we can never have a phase in project that is called quality, because quality occurs everywhere. Quality is seen in terms of how you collect requirements. Quality is seen in how you do your systems analysis. Quality is seen in how you design, and so on. So you build quality into the product, but you cannot say that there'll be a phase where you are going to do quality. So you must make plans for the management of quality. You must make plans for the management of cost. Your customer has a budget. You have to work within that budget. So you must manage your costs. You must make plans for how to manage risk. You must make plans on how to manage procurements, and you must make plans on how you manage all the resources, which includes human resources. Then in the implementation phase, a project team is assembled, procurements take place, the project gets underway, the project must be monitored and changes managed. Communication to stakeholders is an important ongoing activity. Then monitoring and controlling includes measuring the ongoing project activities. Where are we? Remember, during initiation and planning, you planned for the project. So you have documents, you have your work breakdown structure, you have your schedule, you have your Gantt chart. And in these things, you have stated the duration of each of the tasks, when the tasks are starting, and the costing of the tasks. So you will keep referring to that document to see, I planned for 2 weeks. Am I within the 2 weeks? So the question you keep asking at this phase is, where are we? You must, during the monitoring and controlling, you must monitor the project variables, where you must monitor the cost, the effort, the scope, and so on, against the project management plan and the project performance baseline. So the question here that you need to be asking yourself is, where should we be? Then you must identify corrective action to address issues and risks properly. If something has happened, how can we get on track again? What do I need to do? This project is 4 weeks late. What do I do to ensure that it ends in the 6 months that I projected? Do I employ more people? Do I shift do I shift tasks? Do I change people who are doing these tasks, and so on? Then you, at the monitoring and the controlling, you look at influencing the factors that could circumvent the integrated change control, so that only approved changes are implemented. So do not make changes do not informally make changes. If you have to make changes, you must make them informally. And do not go around mistakes. Somebody is asking something. Or somebody is asking about attendance. I'll talk about it at the end. So circumventing simply means, sometimes a problem is arising, and what you do, you ignore it in the hope that it will go away. Now, if a problem arises, address it. Don't hope that it will go around. Do not use shortcuts and hope that it will go away. Then the closure phases. The closure phase includes the formal acceptance of the project and the ending thereof. Now, administrative activities include archiving the files and documenting the lessons learned. In a project, anytime you start a project, you will need a file, because you will need the you will need to record or keep a record of the contract. You will need the 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 the, the the planning documents. You need the budgeting documents. So you will have the file. So you will need to archive it. You need to store it safely, because you may in future need to do a similar project. Now, when you archive these files and you have done a project and you get a similar project, you will do that the next project in a better way, because there are certain lessons that have been learned. And this is why we are saying you must document any lessons that you have learned. So the closure phase consists of two things. It consists of the project close, where you finalize all activities across all of the process groups to formally close the project or project phase. So you close the project, where, if, for example, if it's a building, you tell the fundis, we've finished, tomorrow don't come. So that is, in other words, you stop the actual work. And then you close there's what is called contract closure, where you complete and settle each contract, including the solution of any open items, and close each contract applicable to the project or project phase. So it's where you now look at that legal document and go through it item by item and tick it and say, this, we did this. So you close the contract. So in the closure phase, you also do reporting. You report to all stakeholders. You close out procurements, make payments, all the final payments, identify the lessons learned, and in some cases, celebrate. Especially these building construction projects, you find people throwing a party to say, we are done with the project. So those are the four phases that we go through in a project. Now, the emphasis differs from project to project. Now, having seen that, we've seen that a project has those four phases. And I've said projects are different and the emphasis is different. Now, because of that, we have what is called the continuum of project life cycles. We have at one end what are called predictive projects. In other words, the requirements are very straightforward. And on the other end, we have what are called agile projects. And in between, we have incremental and iterative projects. So incrementally iterative, and we are calling this a continuum because a project could be between predictive and iterative. A project would be between iterative and incremental. A project would be between incremental and agile. And that's why we use the word continuum. I mean, it may not be purely predictive. It may be predictive and interactive. So it could fall anywhere between this extreme and this extreme. So predictive is at the one extreme end, and agile is at the other extreme end. So in predictive projects, requirements are defined upfront before development begins. In other words, the requirements are clear. So, like a house, the requirements are clear. You can say, I want a bungalow, a 3-bedroom bungalow. I want my rooms to be this size, and so on. For software, somebody will tell you, I want a beautiful user interface. Now, how do you define a beautiful user interface? I want an efficient, I want an efficient system. How do you define those terms? Those terms only become clear as the project progresses. For example, if somebody says, I want a beautiful interface, defining the beautiful can be quite difficult, because if you are saying, I want a beautiful interface, and it's serving, this is a system that is serving customers, are you going to talk to all those customers to ask them what beautiful is? So there are some of these requirements that you become clear as the project progresses. So this is what we mean by saying that in predictive projects, requirements are defined upfront before development begins. In predictive projects, you deliver plans for the eventual deliverables. So based on the requirements, you come up with the plan for how to do the project. In predictive projects, you deliver only a single final product at the end of the project timeline. In predictive project, change is constrained as much as possible. In predictive projects, because the requirements are clear, once the requirements are defined, you don't expect to be changing the plan. So you try as much as possible not to change the plan. Then in predictive projects, key stakeholders are involved at specific milestones. So you will say, gathering requirements. You will call, after you've gathered requirements, you write that, you specify those requirements formally, then you call a meeting with the customer. And then you look at that document, and then he says, yes, this is what I want. You do a systems analysis. You call him for a meeting after the systems analysis. You look at the system analysis document. He says, that is what I want. You approve it. So we involve them at specific milestones. Then in predictive projects, risks and costs are controlled by detailed planning of mostly knowable considerations. In predictive projects, you try to predict the risks. So you put the risks down and you go over the risks with the customer. So, and mostly this happens with projects whose requirements are known. So those are predictive projects. Now, agile projects on the other end, let me look at the two extreme ends. The requirements are elaborated frequently during delivery. So you start with general requirements. Now, the general requirement is a stock management system. Then as you go along, you will keep elaborating on those requirements. Now, here it's as if you come up with the requirements and you freeze them. The moment your customer has signed off the requirement specification documents, you freeze it. Here, the requirements are stated generally, but they are elaborated as the project proceeds. Now, delivery occurs frequently with customer valued subsets of the overall product. Now, remember here, you deliver a single final product, but here, any small product that you do, you talk to the customers. Now, based on the product that you are doing, you now elaborate on the requirements. Now, change is constrained as much as possible. In other words, because the requirements are clear, you don't expect drastic changes. But here you anticipate change. So you accept that change is going to occur. So change is incorporated in real time during delivery. So as you show the customer what you have done, he's going to suggest some changes. So you will make those changes. Now here, key stakeholders are involved at specific milestones. Here, key stakeholders are continuously involved. And in Agile, risk and costs are controlled as requirements and constraints emerge. Now, because of the level of uncertainty, you can't predict risk beforehand. So what you do is that as the project proceeds, you do your risk analysis and deal with the risk. So this is at this extreme end. Now, in terms of software, most times in DCI, we do information systems. Now, these days, even as at yesterday, there's a lot of hype about AI systems. Now, let's say you live here, and what you did in your second year was a database system. What you did in fourth year is a database system. Now you go out there and people are talking about AI, and you are employed by somebody, and they're telling you, we need to develop an AI software. You have not ventured into that area. And probably the person who is employing you has not done it. He's employing you because, first of all, he employs you by asking you, which programming language are you good in? You tell him, I'm good in Java. How good? Say, I'm very good. And then any other one, you tell him. So he tells you, okay, now that you're a good programmer, but we are doing this AI system. You've never done it before because all you've been doing is that you've been dealing with the database systems. So now you are venturing into developing an AI system. That is an unknown area to you. So it's very hard for you to know the requirements beforehand. So what will happen is that you'll know the requirements as time goes along. So that becomes an agile project for you. Now, in between the predictive, because these two are at the extreme ends, we have what are called iterative and or incremental projects. In these projects, they lie between this and this. The requirements can be elaborated at periodic intervals during the delivery. Delivery can be divided into subsets of the overall project. Change is incorporated at periodic intervals. Key stakeholders are regularly involved. Now remember, here, stakeholders are involved at specific milestones. You can plan to when you meet the stakeholders. Here, you don't necessarily have to plan, but you ensure that If you think you've done something substantial, you talk the stakeholder. Now here, you continuously involve the stakeholder. Now, in iterative and incremental projects, risk and costs are controlled by progressively elaborating the plan with the new information. So everything happens as you gather more information, because as you gather more information, you become wise as far as that project is concerned. So this gathering more information, we call it empirical. You are observing things and your decisions are being made based on based on your observations. Now, as opposed to predictive, where you already have that information and you know that that information is solid. Here, you don't have solid information. You become wiser as you get more information. And this is where we use the word empirical when we talk about agile, especially when we talk about agile. So what we are saying is that we are moving from a situation where we have solid information to a situation where our information is defined by the evidence that we have gathered. So this is what we call the continuum of project life cycle. So the project will either be predictive or they will be agile. And how you proceed depends on whether it's predictive or agile. So we'll now look at predictive projects in detail. So in predictive projects, the project deliverables are defined at the beginning of the project, and any changes to the scope are progressively managed. So you define the deliverables, and uh, any changes, first of all, you will have to do them formally as they occur. So in predictive projects, we have what is called the scope baseline. Now, the scope baseline is actually a formal or formal documents that define the boundaries of the project. So, the scope baseline of the project, remember, we are talking about scope, and I've said scope are the boundaries, and these are documents that make this project formal. So they include the approved version of the project scope statement. So you must state the scope. I am building a stock management system for you. I will deliver it. I will install it. I'll give you the operation manual, and I'll stop there. That is the scope of the statement. What of maintenance? Do you want me to be doing it? Okay, if you want me to be doing it, are you going to be paying me yearly, or do I maintain it for 5 years and I'll stop there? So you must be very clear. You must be explicit about where the project stops. This is and what the project is all about. This is the scope statement. Then the work breakdown structure. What are the tasks that are involved in coming up with this project? And then you must have what is called the work breakdown structure dictionary. Projects are different. Projects in the health industry are not same are not similar to projects in the construction industry. So you must have a dictionary that defines the terms as pertains to projects. Otherwise, the project team will get confused. So you must have a dictionary, because the terms used in the health field and the terms used in the construction field are not the same. So you must have a dictionary that defines the terms that are going to be used in the work breakdown structure. Now, in predictive projects, a baseline can only be changed through formal change control procedures. Now, we've defined the scope baseline. Now, any baseline, anything in the scope baseline you must do it formally. If you have to change the scope, you must do it formally. If you have to change a task in the work breakdown structure, you must change it formally. The same thing to the dictionary. So a baseline can only change through formal change control procedures and is used as the basis for comparison while doing what is called validate scope and control scope. Validate scope occurs with each deliverable or phase review. In other words, invalidate scope is you have done a task. You check the task against these documents to ascertain that you have met what you stated out in these documents. Then control scope is where if you are changing the scope, it must be accepted between you and the client. The client cannot just say, add this, and you go and add it. Neither can you, without consulting him, add something or remove something. So it must be done through a formal procedure. That is for predictive projects. For adaptive or agile life cycle, the deliverables are developed over multiple iterations where a detailed scope is defined and approved for each iteration when it begins. Now, I gave you an example where a customer tells you the user interface should be easy to use. Now, I want a beautiful user interface. Now, how do you define easy to use or a beautiful user interface? Those are very difficult terms to define. So why we are saying it's going to be done over multiple iterations is once you have designed the user interface, you will show him, first of all, at a very high level. Then you will show him physically, and he'll make recommendations, and then you go back. And that's why we are saying deliverables are developed over multiple iterations. So the sponsor and the customer representative should be continuously engaged with the project to provide feedback on deliverables as they are created and ensure the product backlog reflects the current need. The validate scope and control scope are repeated for each iteration. In other words, you do these processes for each iteration. Projects with adaptive life cycles use backlogs. Now, a backlog are documents which include product requirements and user stories to reflect their current needs. So, any questions so far? Any question on predictive and agile projects? Okay, having said that, we now go to the next thing. Now,
just to ask,
yes.
How do you control scope for either one of predictive and agile when you're designing a product where your customer is different from your client? Like, for example, when you're designing an app for kids, we'll say that the customer is the parent who will download the app and the child is the client. How do you define scope in such an issue?
Okay, first of all, scope is a okay. S- Scope are the boundaries of the product. So let's say the app you are talking about, the app for kids. Uh, you could say the scope is that this app is going to reside on a smartphone. Now, once you say that this app is going to reside on a smartphone, then you'll need to say, then who are the users? Who are the users of this app? Now you'll say the users are the small kids. Then you will say, what do you mean by small kids? What is the age range? And what do you mean by small? So you are saying that this app is for kids, meaning you are not going to customize it to deal with adults. So when you say it's for kids, we know that kids like colorful things. So as long as you're saying it's for kids, then the scope the scope ends by you making it have uh, appealing colors for the kids. But if you okay, crudely, if you say that this app is for adults, it could be textual. It doesn't have you don't have to have those beautiful buttons. So you can see that there is a big boundary between between if the app was being used for adults and if it was being used for kids. For adults, you can disregard the colors. So for adults, as long as it's there, it could be textual based. So the boundary becomes that as long as you delivered it and it's textual based. But for kids, you can see that the scope now increases. You go beyond just inputting text and you define that we shall be using buttons. So uh, boundaries are dependent on what that product is going to be used for. And you see where the scope comes in is that if you don't define, like it's good that you've mentioned kids. If you don't say that this app is going to be for kids, what I'll do, I'll just develop an app and I'll deliver the app. Now, the moment I deliver the app, it's running. Somebody can see that if I double click on this icon, it's doing something. And it's because I have the client has not clearly defined what what he should see. So if he just says, I want an app for kids, and you leave it at that, I'll develop an app and I leave it at that. As long as I've installed it on your smartphone and I double click on it and it seems to be doing something, I'll have delivered. But the moment I state it is for kids, then I'll define why are you specifying that it is for kids? For kids, it must have some appealing features, and now that defines the boundary, as opposed to just saying develop an app that can be used by kids. So
And sorry.
yes,
Oh, and that was also I was going to lead to ask again. I don't know if we'll cover in financial analysis.
yes,
Um, Now let's move from the app and say, for example, when the government was saying it was going to develop, I think, laptops for children to study.
yes,
Yeah, and in that case, let's assume that a private IT firm takes up that job,
uh-huh,
and in that case, now the customer is the parent because they are buying the physical product,
yes,
but the client would be the child. And I think maybe that's where I'm struggling to fix the boundary. Like, how do I accommodate marketing for a parent, but then also design for the child? But I get how you mean for the colorful and interactive buttons for children. That's all understood.
Aha, okay. So, okay, here I think your confusion is this. There is the parent who is paying for the product, and there is the kid who is using the product. Is that where your confusion is?
Yes. Now, how do you accommodate the project for both elements as stakeholders, but different people?
Now, that is where the requirement and the gathering of requirements becomes important. Yeah, the government wants to buy laptops for children, or rather, it's procuring laptops, but it's the parent who is going to pay for those laptops. But the user is going to be the kid. So it means that the person who is designing, who is taking up that project, must first of all talk to the parent, and is going to talk to the parent in terms of finances. And then he must also talk to the child's representative. And in this case, the child's representative will have to be the teachers who are teaching this child, because it's the teachers who know the requirements of small children. Because a child in himself or herself wouldn't give you requirements. So if it's, for example, if it's for nursery school children, the people who can give you requirements for nursery school children are going to be the teachers of those nursery school children, because nursery school children cannot give you the requirements. So to define the boundaries, then you'll need to talk to, and there's somewhere I think I talked about the representative of the client. Like for nursery school children, the representative would be the nursery school teachers. They are the ones who you will need to talk to, and you'll talk to them specifically about the user interface so that the child can easily use. But you'll again have to talk to the parent, because he's the one financing. You'll have to talk to the parent about what the budget is, what amount of money they can use. So it's good you've raised this question. It becomes very important before you start any project to talk to the stakeholders, and you will find that you may have to talk to different stakeholders to get information pertaining to the different things that that project is going to do. So the gathering of requirements then becomes very important in setting the boundaries, because boundaries are determined by the cost and boundaries are determined by the functionality of that system. And like I told you, once those boundaries form part of the what I was calling the contract between the stakeholder or the client and the system. Now, it's an interesting question. It's sorry. Okay. I don't know whether you are getting my gist of argument. All those boundaries are
Yeah.
set by how you
Uh,
gather the requirements.
Requirements, definitely.
Sorry?
Or like
Sorry?
he said, requirements. Yeah, I think I understand that. To accommodate another stakeholder, you need to gather requirements from other sources.
Unit, yes. So that is the stage that is very important. And that's why we've been talking about predictive and agile projects. You see, for predictive projects, like the situation where you are saying, it's easy. You because you'll talk to the parent to know his budget, because he's the one paying. But you will need to talk to the user to know how are they going to use it, because sometimes you talk to the user, and what he's requiring out of that system is more than the budget. it means that you'll have to do a bit more work, but this person is only willing to spend so much. So you'll have to talk to all those what I'm calling the stakeholders. And stakeholders is a broad term that covers the financials, that covers the users, and so on. So it is what you get from the stakeholders that sets the boundary of the system. Okay, Wetungu, Edwin. I thought Wetungu wanted to raise the hand. Okay, since he must have tapped it accidentally. Is there another question? Wetungu, you've written too much text. I can't read this. Unless you just put it. Okay. So, okay. Yes, we've looked at this. Now, having looked at this and what I said here, I said all projects go through all these phases. But now it is the elaboration. I mean, for different projects, the elaboration is different. There are projects where starting the project is very hard and it takes a lot of time. There are projects where planning for the project will take a lot of time as opposed to starting. So we have variations in the elaboration in these phases. And because of those variations, we have many different formal methodologies for doing the project. So for software projects, one of the formal methodology is referred to as Scrum. So Scrum, by general definition, is an agile methodology designed to guide teams in the iterative and incremental delivery of a product. Now, Scrum is a formal project management, product development methodology, and part of agile project management. Now, in second year, you did a project, and for some of the project I saw, some of you were using the Scrum methodology. Now, you may, I'm talking about this because I don't want to confuse you. Now, notice this definition is saying Scrum is a project management methodology. So Scrum is a methodology for project management, and it is for agile projects. Now, Scrum is a product development methodology. So Scrum is a methodology that is used both for product development and for managing projects. And it's a formal methodology. So in Scrum, you will find these stages. You will find these stages. But what Scrum does is that, as you can see, these stages appear like they are incremental and they are sequential. So you start from here, you go to here, you go to here, you go to here. Now, implicitly, it means that once, I mean, if it was for predictive projects, it means that you have boundaries here. Once you finish starting and initiating a project, it's only after you've finished it that you go to planning. After you've planned, you go to execution. After execution, you go to exit. And the looping only seems to appear here. Now, in Scrum, yes, we have these stages, but we are doing it iteratively. In other words, in Scrum, what we do is that we take a project, we divide it into different components, and for each of these components, we do this. We do this. So, I mean, for each stage, we are going to do it iteratively. And this is what we are talking about here. Is a form of, so Scrum is a term from rugby, scrummage, which means a way of restarting a game. So in rugby, when somebody some has to be restarted. So in other words, it's like restarting the game. Okay, before the game starts, I mean, before the game, there's the start part of the game where minute 0, the one team kicks the ball. But as the game proceeds, things will happen. Somebody will infringe on a rule. Somebody will tackle another one in a wrong way. Now, when that happens, the game has to restart. So, but the game only restarts when there's an infringement to a rule. Otherwise, the game proceeds smoothly. But a game will never proceed smoothly. Something will always happen. So when something happens, you'll have to restart the game. So the name Scrum is not an acronym for anything. It is directly borrowed from rugby, whereby in rugby, when somebody kicks, when you start the game, you hope that something will not happen, but inevitably something happens. And when it happens, you cannot predict when it's going to happen. But when it happens, you use the Scrum to restart the game. So we just take that we take that term literally the way it applies to Scrum, and we put it into project management. So Scrum is a term from rugby or scrummage that means a way of restarting a game. It's like restarting the project every X weeks. Now, in our project, in project management, what we are saying is that we have divided the project into phases, and we are saying we restart for each phase. We do it again as if we are doing it for the first time. So it is based on the idea that one does not really know how to plan the whole project upfront. So they start and build empirical data. Remember, I talked about empirical. Now, empirical data is data that is gathered from observation. So when we say we are using empirical data, what we are saying is that you make a decision based on the data that you have gathered. And that is why we say that Scrum is an agile type of life cycle. Because in agile, we don't know the requirements. So what happens is that unlike predicting projects where the requirements are clear and you can base your planning on these requirements, in agile, the requirements are not clear. So what you do is that you start with basic requirements. Then you do something. Basic requirements, for example, when a user says, I want a beautiful interface, he'll try to give you general ideas of what they mean by beautiful. So what you do is that you design the interface and you show the customer. Now, when you are showing the customer is going to react to what you've shown him. And as he reacting to what you've shown him, he's giving you more facts. Now, using these more facts, you refine the interface. Show him again. He makes his comments. You refine it further. So you do it iteratively. Sorry. Yeah, so this is what we mean by building using empirical data. So they start and build empirical data and then replan and iterate from there. So like I've said, you start, show the customer, refine requirements, do it again, show him, and so on. So that is why we are talking about replanning and iterating. And all that is based on empirical data. So when we say you are using empirical data, you do not use theory. You base your decision based on something that is observed. So in Scrum, the involvement of stakeholders is throughout the project is critical. I've said, he tells you generally, do something, show him, refine, and so on. So Scrum relies heavily on the collaboration between the team and the customer or customer representative to create the right product in a lean fashion. Now, the question that I was answering about the laptop for kids and so on. Now, remember, I said small children do not know requirements. So the teacher is their representative, and this is what we mean by customer or customer representative to create the right product in a lean fashion. Scrum is not the sole method for implementing Agile principles. We've talked about what Agile principles are. So it is one of the many approaches to product development. It has become very popular. And I see most times people are using Scrum. But we also have extreme programming, Crystal, feature-driven dynamic development, dynamic systems, feature-driven development, dynamic systems development method, Atan, and so on. So we have many other agile development methodologies. But for this course, we shall just mainly concentrate on Scrum. So the focus now to compare Scrum and traditional project management methods, this focus on Scrum is on the use of an empirical process that allows teams to respond rapidly, efficiently, and effectively to change. Empirical process, I've said, you make decisions based on facts that you have observed. Now, what is the difference? Traditional project management methods fix requirements in an effort to control time and cost. In traditional project management, what happens is that you gather requirements. Then, after you've gathered requirements, you sign off the requirements with the client. You say, is this what we agreed? So you fix the requirements. In other words, you don't want or you do not anticipate that the requirements will change. Once you've signed it, you don't, okay, we know that requirements will change, but you don't want, you always assume that requirements will not change. And this is what I was talking about, predictive projects. In predictive projects, the requirements are fixed. So in traditional system, we fix requirements. So you would be uncomfortable if the customer changes requirements. So you use the requirements to determine time and the cost. In other words, you base your costing and the time on the requirements. But Scrum, on the other hand, fixes time and cost in an effort to control requirements. In Scrum, you fix time. You say, I'm going to do this in 4 weeks. So you will not change those 4 weeks. And it's going to change, and it's going to cost me 10,000 shillings for this particular phase. 4 weeks, 10,000 shillings. And then you say, in 4 weeks and for 10,000 shillings, what can I do effectively? So it's as if they are exact opposites of each other. Fixed requirements, and is a requirement you fix. So for Scrum, we do this using time boxes, collaborative ceremonies, prioritized product backlog, and frequent feedback cycles. Now, these two are straightforward. A prioritized product backlog are actually requirements. It is taking requirements and prioritizing them. You know, you can have 100 requirements, but you'll say this requirement is the most important, so you make it number one. Then you say this requirement is the next one in importance, you make it number two. So you have your list of requirements, and you can have very many requirements, but then you prioritize them, with the highest priority being at the top and the lowest priority being at the bottom. So these are the things that help us to achieve Scrum. In other words, that help us fix time and cost to control requirements. Then frequent feedback cycles. You do a task, and based on how that task has been done, you feedback information. So these two are obvious. Now, let me try and elaborate on time boxing and collaborative ceremonies. So in time boxing allocates a fixed and maximum unit of time to an activity. That time is called a time box, within which planned activity takes. So you say this activity is going to take so much time, and that time is fixed. And that time we refer to it as a time box. So it is used by agile principle-based project management approaches for personal and for personal time management. So we use time boxing either is when we are using agile, or when we also want to do personal time management. Then we have ceremonies. Scrum has its own jargon. So in Scrum, an event or a meeting, we refer to it as a ceremony. So we have what is called sprint planning, we have a sprint review, we have sprint retrospective, and we have what is called the daily Scrum. Now, basically, these are just meetings for different phases. Now we shall be seeing how this happens by use of a diagram. So Scrum, in overview, is an agile development methodology used in the development of software based on iterative and incremental processes. It is an adaptable, fast, flexible, and effective agile framework that is designed to deliver value to the customer throughout the development of the project. The primary objective of Scrum is to satisfy the customer's needs through communication. You communicate with the customer through collective responsibility. In other words, in Scrum, there is no blame game. You don't blame the customer. The customer should not blame you. Your focus is on the product. We want to produce a good product. And this good product will come as a result of us collaborating. Give me requirements as best as you can and as clearly as you can. I will deliver this system using the right standards, in the right quality. So in Scrum, what we say is that this is our product. The customer, in Scrum, the customer will not say that develop that for me, because the customer is going to be involved throughout all the stages. And we satisfy customers' needs through continuous progress. In other words, every time you develop something, you show the customer so that you get feedback and you act on that feedback. Now, Scrum is used when requirements are difficult to define, or when requirements are subject to rapid change. So, is what we said. We have predictive projects and we have agile projects. Now, Scrum is an agile project management methodology. Now, you use it when, and we said products are different. There are products where it's easy to define requirements. There are products where it is difficult to define requirements. There are products where requirements rapidly change, and there are products where requirements are static. So Scrum methodology is used mainly for software development. And that is why, because here we are dealing with ICT project management, that is why of these methodologies that I mentioned here, I think I mentioned them somewhere, these ones, we have chosen to concentrate on Scrum. So it's mainly used for software development. Other fields are also taking advantage of its benefits by implementing this methodology in their organization models, such as you could use it in sales, marketing, human resource, and so on. Now, Scrum has many players, and these many players have different roles. Now, in Scrum, we have what is called the product owner. Product owner is a representative of the stakeholders and the customers who use the software. Now, like I said, sometimes the users of the system are not going to give you useful information, or sometimes you cannot access the users of the system. So, for example, in banks, who uses the ATM machines? It is not the staff. Okay, the staff of the bank can use it, but it is you and I who are going to use that ATM machine. Now, when will I ever meet the developers of the software that runs ATM machines? When are you going to meet them? It's very hard for them to reach you. So there has to be somebody to represent you. And this is why we are saying a product owner is a representative of the stakeholder and the customers who use the software. The product owner focuses on the business part and is responsible for the return on investment of the product. So most of the time, I'm the one using the ATM machine. But who does the ATM machine benefit? It benefits the bank, because I will now not have to go inside the bank. So he can reduce the number of tellers, so he can save on their salary payment. So he'll get the benefit. The product owner translates the vision of the project to the team and validates the benefits in stories to be incorporated into the product backlog and prioritizes them on a regular basis. Now, like I've said, there's a lot of jargon in Scrum. Stories are experiences or information pertaining to the product. The product backlog, I told you, is the requirements. So we have the product owner in Scrum. Then we have the development team, which is a group of professionals with the necessary technical knowledge who develop the project by jointly carrying out the stories they commit at the start of each sprint. Now, remember in Scrum, we said it is iterative. So when you start the first time, we call that a sprint. Now, at the end of each sprint, you get a product. Now, you show the product to the customer. Customer gives you feedback, which you are going to use to improve what you have shown him. Then you go to the second sprint. Second sprint, you get a newer version of what you showed him before. He gives you feedback. Go through the same phases again, give him the product. He tells you, now it's okay. You stop that sprint. So is a group of professionals with the necessary technical knowledge to who develop the project by jointly carrying out the stories they commit to at the start of each sprint. Then it may include specialist roles such as developer, subject matter expert, and so on. So people who are involved in the actual development. A Scrum Master leads the team and guides them to comply with the rules and the processes of the methodology. Scrum Master could be like the project manager, manages the reduction of impediments of the project and works with the product owner to maximize the return on investment. Is in charge of keeping Scrum up to date, provides coaching, mentoring, and training to the team in case he needs it. So this is jargon, or these are terms used in Scrum Master. So this could be like the project manager. So how does it proceed? How does the methodology proceed? Now, the process is a very easy methodology to implement and very popular for quick results, for the quick results it gets, because you deliver product as soon as possible to the customer. Because we said it uses empirical data. What you want to do is that you have the general requirements, but you want to elaborate them so as to get a better product. So it has a starting point, a list of objectives and requirements that make up what is called the project plan. The project client prioritizes objectives considering a balance of the value and cost thereof, which determines iterations and consequent deliveries. Any product has objectives. So at the beginning, and these objectives are stated in terms of requirements. So at the beginning, you list all the requirements and then you prioritize them, meaning you know which one to begin with and which one to stress on. So market demands quality and fast delivery, and that is what Scrum aims to do. An organization must be very agile and flexible in development of products. To use Scrum, remember there is a collaboration. There must be regular meetings between the Scrum team and the stakeholders. So when we say that the organization must be agile, they must be willing if you call them for a meeting. And remember, in Scrum, we are doing what is called time boxing. Time boxing, you fix the time. You say, for this task, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for so many weeks. And you fix that. You say 4 weeks, you fix it. Now, what you talk to the client about is, I can do so much in this software in this 4 weeks. So you put your requirements in a way that they can fit in the 4 weeks. So your client has to be flexible, because you'll need to tell him, you have to let us remove this requirement, because if we put it, we are going to exceed this number of weeks. But we are not willing to change the number of weeks. That's what we mean by agile and flexible. So each Scrum event facilitates the adaptation of some aspects of the project, the product, progress, or relationships. So basically what it means is that you must accept that there will be changes in the process, there will be changes in the product, there will be changes in the progress of the relationship. So Scrum is executed in temporary blocks that are short and periodic, called sprints. Sprints usually range from 2 to 4 weeks, which is the term for feedback and reflection. Each sprint is an entity in itself. In other words, for each sprint, you will get some result. Each sprint is an entity. It provides a complete result, a variation of the final product that must be able to be delivered to the client. In other words, Scrum is iterative. So a sprint produces a product. Now, based on the product, there's feedback. Now, that feedback goes back as input, and then we start the next sprint. And you keep doing that until the customer is satisfied. So this is an example of Scrum, where we have inputs from customers, team, and managers. Just like I said, for an ATM project, I am the customer, but I will only use the system. The bank is the product owner. The bank is the one who owns the ATM machine. I am the one who uses it. Now, and it goes to, and that's why the person who asked that question initially, I said it's an interesting question. It goes back to that. You know, I am not the owner of the ATM machine. The bank is the owner, but I am the user. If I reject that ATM machine, even though I am not the owner, it's going to affect the bank. If you install an ATM machine and the user interface is so bad, and I am going back, I'm going to the teller, I'm going inside the bank, I am going to the teller. But the ATM machine was supposed to reduce the number of people in the banking hall. But because it's so bad, I keep going to the banking hall, and the bank has laid off some tellers because they were installing this machine. It's going to have an impact on him. So that is why you need to differentiate who the users are and who the owner of the system is. We are the users. In fact, we are the ones who are using the system, the ATM machines, but the bank owns the system. So this is the bank owner. So it's the bank owner, based on on his experiences with me, who is going to produce what is called a product backlog. Now, a product backlog is a prioritized list of what is required, the features, and the bugs to fix. More like the requirements. Now, after the requirements have been made, we have the team. Now, this is the Scrum team. These are the people who are going to develop. So there's this bank owner who comes up with requirements, and those requirements are based on the users of the system. So once he has done the product backlog, which is basically like a requirements specification, he gives it to this team. Now the team selects, starting at the top, as much as it can commit to deliver by the end of each sprint. So we have what is called a sprint planning meeting. So in the planning meeting, they take the requirements and they prioritize them. So the bank has come up with the requirements for the product. They've given to the Scrum team. They plan. Now, when they are planning, they prioritize. And then they, in the plan, they say, this sprint, these activities will come in this sprint. And this sprint is going to take 4 weeks. Now, remember, we said in Scrum, we do time boxing. In time boxing, you set time which is not flexible, and then you fix the requirements within that time. Now, this is what is called the sprint backlog. You have time box. You have said, you first of all, you've prioritized. Number one, I'm going to do from number 1 to number 10 in 10 weeks. Now, that is what is called a sprint backlog, what you are going to do in those 10 weeks. In those 10 weeks, I'm going to do this 20. I'm going to cater for these 20 requirements. Then you go, you start a sprint, you take 4 weeks because you've time boxed. Now, in these 4 weeks, you will have daily meetings. Now, and of course, at the top is the Scrum Master who is overseeing everything. The Scrum Master is talking to the product owner. The Scrum Master is talking to the product team. So you've time boxed it for 1 to 4 weeks, let's say. So the spring and end date and the term deliverable do not change. That's why we are doing time boxing. And this is opposed to the traditional methodologies. Now, in these 4 weeks, you shall be having meetings on a daily basis. In the morning, every morning you'll have a meeting. And when you have this meeting, you look at it can either be burn up or burn down chart. They both are giving the same information. Burn down, you say, this is the task we want to accomplish. Then you say, we accomplished this. Then you say you are accomplishing this. So you can look at how the tasks you've accomplished either from the top or from the bottom. From the bottom, you say, I did this. From the top, you say, we have cut off this task. From the top, you say, this is what is remaining. From the bottom, you say, this is what we have done. So you can look at it from both ways. And it's usually a chart that is pasted on a whiteboard where everybody can see. So you have those daily stand-up meetings. And then for each sprint, there must be a product. Now that product that you produce, you show it to the various stakeholders who will review it and who will ask questions. Could we have done it in a better way or not? Oops. So I think let me stop there. We can pick up from there next week. We'll finish it next week because I can see it's now 11. You could be going to another class. I posted the attendance. I hope you are now able to see it. And please just mark for last week and this week. So it's heading to 11. You may be having another class, so let me release you. I was hoping I would finish this, but we can start from there.
Could you please repost the link?
The link for?
The sheet attendance.
Okay, because unless your name is not on that sheet, if your name is not on that sheet list, please just send me an email, then I